There are seasons in the soul where everything goes quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but a silence that feels like exile, a haunting stillness that whispers, "You no longer belong where you once bloomed." It begins slowly. You lose interest in what once gave you direction. The goals that once thrilled you now feel hollow. The path ahead is fogged, and the past offers no warmth. People call it laziness, depression, burnout. But beneath the surface, something sacred is stirring, something wordless, wild and divine. It is the ache of awakening. You move through your days like a stranger to your own reflection. Conversations feel empty, tasks feel pointless. The colors of life seem drained, and what's worse, you cannot explain it to anyone, not really. Because how do you tell someone that your soul is shedding its skin, that you're losing the version of yourself that once made sense? This is the pain of unbecoming, the sacred wound of no longer fitting into the costume the world applauded. The persona that worked so hard, that smiled so well, that played all the right roles. It now hangs loose on your spirit. It no longer fits, and your very body knows it. This isn't lack of motivation. This is the soul's quiet rebellion. You are not lazy. You are no longer hypnotized. You are not failing. You are beginning again. You are not weak. You are waking up. And awakenings often come disguised as despair. You feel like you're dissolving, but in truth, you're being reassembled. Let the world misunderstand. Let them call it what they want. You know, deep inside, that something ancient is calling you back to yourself. So if you're tired, withdrawn, uncertain, it's not the end. It's the crossing. Carl Jung wrote, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." What you are experiencing now, this stillness, this internal erosion of meaning, is not a malfunction. It is the surfacing of your shadow, the parts of you that were hidden for survival, the truths you denied to be accepted, the voice you silenced to be loved. Jung called this confrontation with the shadow a necessary passage for individuation, the process of becoming whole. He did not speak of healing as a return to comfort, but as a descent into the very parts of ourselves we were taught to fear. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your unclaimed inheritance. When you feel unmotivated, exhausted, detached, it is often the shadow crying for your attention. It's not asking to be fixed, it's asking to be felt. This despondency you carry is not the sign of weakness. It is the soul reclaiming its authority over the life you've lived for others. The roles, the performances, the compulsions to achieve, these were the mask, and the mask is now cracking. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, Jung said, but by making the darkness conscious. Your lack of drive is not a curse, it is the dismantling of your false self. You are being led away from performance and into presence, from control into mystery, from persona into essence. You are not lost. You are just meeting yourself, without disguise, without applause, and that meeting is holy. There comes a sacred moment when the soul says, "Enough. Enough pretending, enough striving, enough clinging to roles that no longer reflect the truth within." This moment is not dramatic. It is quiet, often invisible. It looks like retreat, but it is resurrection in disguise. This is the withdrawal of the persona, the emotional mask you wore to survive, to belong, to be seen. Now that mask grows heavy. It begins to itch. It begins to suffocate. You do not leave the crowd because you hate them. You leave because the sound of your soul has grown louder than the noise of approval. In Jungian terms, this withdrawal is a return to the inner sanctum, the symbolic wilderness where transformation happens. Here, in this psychological desert, you are not producing, you are not performing, you are not proving, you are simply being, painfully, tenderly, truthfully. The silence you feel is not absence, it is initiation. In myth and scripture, every prophet had a season in the wilderness. Every wise one had to walk away from the city, the temple, the familiar voices, to encounter God, not in the noise of the world, but in the whisper of stillness. This silence is not empty. It is saturated with the echoes of your truest self. Let yourself disappear for a while. Let yourself be misunderstood. Let yourself be unseen. You are not vanishing. You are deepening. The caterpillar must dissolve into formlessness before it can fly, and so must you. This time alone, this strange season of stillness is not weakness. It is sacred withdrawal. It is a choice to honor the voice within, even if no one else hears it. And though the world may forget you in this pause, heaven does not. God often hides his greatest works in silence. There is a sacred silence that God himself chooses. In 1 Kings 19, the prophet Elijah, exhausted and despairing, flees into the wilderness. He has performed miracles, challenged kings, called down fire from heaven, and yet he finds himself under a solitary tree, praying to die. "I have had enough, Lord," he says, "take my life." And what does God do? He does not rebuke Elijah. He does not command him to push through. He sends an angel with bread and water, and then allows him to sleep. This is the tenderness of God toward those in holy exhaustion. Later, on the mountain, Elijah waits for the Lord to appear. A great wind comes, but God is not in the wind. Then an earthquake, but God is not in the earthquake. Then a fire, but God is not in the fire. And finally, a still, small voice. That is where God was. In the quiet, in the almost imperceptible, in the silence that follows collapse. This mirrors the Jungian journey, where the ego expects fireworks, but the soul encounters whispers. Just as Elijah's strength was not restored through action, but through stillness, you too are being called into a different kind of restoration. Not one driven by productivity, but by presence, not by answers, but by surrender. The Bible does not shame those who break down. It sanctifies them. In the Psalms, David cries, "Why are you cast down, O my soul?" Psalm 42:11. In Lamentations, the prophet writes, "It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." Lamentations 3:26. Silence is not failure. It is the ancient language of the soul. And in that silence, God is not absent. He is whispering. Your lack of motivation is not a punishment. It is your invitation into the holy hush where God still speaks. Not through fire, not through storm, but through the stillness within. There is a kind of transformation that makes no sound. No grand moment, no applause, no visible breakthrough, only a quiet returning to the center, to the soul, to the presence of God within. This is the integration, the inner alchemy, where shadow and light, grief and grace, silence and presence begin to coexist. Carl Jung taught that true healing is not perfection, it is wholeness. To become whole is to stop exiling parts of yourself. It is to allow the shadow to sit at your table, not to rule, but to be heard. To bring the rejected, the exhausted, the silent parts of you into the presence of the sacred. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, Jung wrote, but by integration of the contraries. In your stillness, a slow reassembly begins. You are no longer trying to be someone. You are remembering who you've always been beneath the masks. Your soul is not asking for performance, it is asking for presence. The Bible speaks not only of power, but of process. In Romans 12:2 we are told, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." This word renewing is ongoing, cyclical, interior. It is not a single act, it is a lifelong unfolding. God is not rushing you. He is not disappointed in your stillness. He is moving through it. While the world may demand evidence of your progress, heaven rejoices in your return to authenticity. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt, slowly, silently, sacredly. You don't need to be seen to be whole. You don't need to feel inspired to be loved. You don't need to move fast to be faithful. Even when you feel nothing, God is crafting something. Even when all is quiet, the Spirit still hovers over the waters of your soul. The silence is not the absence of God. It is the space where He performs His deepest work. If your days feel heavy, if your spirit has grown quiet, if you no longer recognize your old self, it is not because you've lost your way. It is because you are finally coming home. You are not unmotivated, you are awakening. The fire that once drove you may have gone out, but in its place, a holy glow is forming, subtle, enduring, eternal. This is not the fire of ambition, but the flame of essence. Not the chase for meaning, but the revelation of presence. The persona you once wore is dissolving, and what remains is not empty. It is pure. It is you, soul-deep, God-breathed, unshakable. Let the world rush. Let them hustle and climb and compare. You to stay here. In this silence, you are not behind. You are beneath, rooted, rerouting, and from this rootedness will rise a new vision, not driven by fear but aligned with truth. You are not here to impress. You are here to become. To the soul that feels invisible, God sees you. To the heart that feels forgotten, He remembers. To the weary seeker, even in silence, heaven listens. So breathe, rest. And when you're ready, rise, not with a mask, but with a mirror. You are the temple, you are the wilderness, you are the meeting place of shadow and light, and in the quiet, you are never alone. If this spoke to your soul, write below. Even in silence, I trust in God. Let this space be your sanctuary, and where awakening is not rushed, and presence is enough.